Welcome to the Free Spirit Woman podcast. I'm Rechelle, your host and intuitive truth teller and doTERRA leader in the Free Spirit Oil tribe. Join me and my inspiring guests as we share stories, weave magic, and give intuitive insight into what it takes to be a free spirit woman. Courageously growing your oil business, turning your fear of network marketing into your fuel, and unleash your magic to the world unapologetically. Let's do it! Alana Helbig is a podcaster, storyteller, and women's mentor. At her core, she's fascinated by the inner pull we all feel to move away from the mundane and create meaning and purpose in our lives. Through her storytelling podcast, Untangled, she dives into the lives of her guests to find out how they untangled from society's giant rule book to create a meaningful life. Through her one-on-one transition coaching packages, she supports women in navigating life, career, and business transitions by helping them to connect into their truth and play an active role in the co-creation of the next phase of their lives. Alana is also the creator of the online program Ignite, Podcasting for Changemakers, where she teaches women how to soulfully and strategically ignite powerful conversations on the podcasting platform. Hello, Alana.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for joining my podcast today, my very new podcast.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to interview you, but at the same time, a bit nervy because you were the first podcast that I actually listened to when I first realized that how amazing podcasts are and how much we can learn from them. So it's really given me a lot of memories back to when, I first found your old podcast, She Makes Magic. So.
Oh, that was a good time. It was a really good time, a special time. So I'm so glad you found me.
Yeah, and look where we are. This is amazing.
Yeah. See what podcasting can do.
I know. Isn't it incredible?
Yeah, it connects you to so many amazing women.
Yeah, I just love it. So shall we just get straight into it, Alana?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So, Alana, what is a free spirit woman feel like to you, or who is she to you?
So when you asked me this question or sent this question through to me, I thought it's really interesting because I think that, or I feel like the free spirit woman is very similar to an untangled woman. So I have a podcast, which we'll probably talk about at some point, called Untangled. And I really feel like our messages kind of intersect a little bit in this area because they're very similar. So when I think about an untangled woman, I think about someone that really is questioning everything and questioning it both internally and externally. So in doing so, she is taking responsibility for her own life and the creation of her own life. So she's looking at stories and beliefs internally that she is made up of or has taken on board as her own in the past. She's looking at rules that apply both internally, that she feels are rules that she's carrying internally, but also external rules that society has defined for us. She's looking at those and she's questioning them, and she is doing an internal check around whether this is actually something that is true and right for her. And then in doing that and understanding what is true and right for her, then she's actually able to move forward in a untangled, in a free-spirited kind of way. And that's really comes from a very empowered place, doesn't it? It's like, I set my rules. I have my values. I understand my worth. I know what my limiting beliefs are, and I'm working with them. And because of that, I take responsibility for my life, and I am the creative force in my life. That's kind of how I see it.
Yes, I do believe Untangled is very similar to you. I feel we're very connected in that sort of sense. And it was interesting, I suppose, when I first found She Makes Magic, all these interviews that you were doing was really opening me up. And now we've arrived here. So Untangled, free spirit woman. But then my question is, when you're in that stage where you're like, what is my worth? What are my rules? And people are basically questioning every element of you. right, which leads me to the next couple of questions. But when you were just talking about that, you're going, it's your reels, it's your responsibility, and the things you're just going through then, what took you from the space of, well, for you it would be untangled, but for me, living in that three-spirited life, how did you get from those pains, those struggles, those stuck feelings, right, that you're stuck in that external stuff that you and I constantly talk about? How did you begin to free yourself from that stuff?
Well, that's the untangling process, and it is a process, and it can be an instantaneous thing, like 1 minute I'm feeling entangled and unfree, and then 1 minute, sometimes people have near-death experiences and it jolts them awake.
Yes.
But for me, it hasn't really been that way. It's been a really long, arduous task of working through that stuff on a continual basis. So it's committing to that, and it's constant work for me. And when I say work, I don't mean, oh God, work. I just mean like it's constant thing that I have to do and keep coming back to,
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Not that I'm here to talk about myself, but we're always evolving and we're always unlayering, aren't we? All the time.
Yes.
And I always say that for the Free Spirit Woman, I basically began this brand, but the brand she is still in that stuff. And there's days when she ain't, there's months when she isn't.
Yeah. Aren't we always?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like we're always weaving through all this. It's just a matter of committing, like you said, to yourself.
Yes.
And when we commit to ourselves and we understand ourselves, I think for me, when you just say all that, when we judge ourselves of being stuck or being in pain or giving up, when we really judge and look at ourselves, then I think we do stay stuck. But if we work through our stuff every day, it just, you know what I'm saying, Alana?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on a good point there. Like, I always talk about to my transition clients that there's a difference between conscious resistance and unconscious resistance. And I think when you are untangling or you're working you through the phases to become a free spirit woman, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
You're going to bump up against resistance and it's going to feel shit. And in all of my interviews with untangled people, there's a prerequisite for them to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. It is part of the process. So I think that you have a choice, which is what you were talking about before. There's unconscious resistance where you're not willing to really look at what's going on under the surface. You're like, this is shit. This is fucked. This is really heavy, and make up some stories about why you can't have what you want, why you can't do what you want. Yes. And why you are the way that you are. Or, like I was saying before, you can take responsibility as the creator of your own life, and you can step consciously into resistance, which means it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy, but you begin to work through it and step through it. And what happens is there's so much goodness waiting on the other side of that, so much goodness, but you've just got to trudge through it. And in the beginning, when we first start this journey, it's so hard because we only just developing the resources, the internal resources to be able to navigate. And I promise for anyone listening that feels like they're at the start of their untangling, their start of their free spirit woman journey, I promise if you keep at it, it does get easier. It really does. Yes. It doesn't... The resistance never goes away and the fear never goes away, but you gain resources along the way to be able to support you with it. And that's what makes it more easeful. Yeah.
Totally. And I'm just going to add a little piece in this. So when you're in that mix of that pain, right, the stuckness or getting untangled, as you say, because that's what you do, you help people to get untangled. When they're in that mix, what do you say you do? You've got your own inner resources and everything. But when you're in that real mix, do you take space? What would be something that you'd say to them that has been really helpful with you, Alana, on that journey yourself?
Yeah, well, there's two things that I would say. The first is get really good at self-soothing, really good at self-soothing. And I say this because I'm going through a massive transition and untangling at the moment, and I have had to basically mother myself through it.
Wow.
And a couple of weeks ago, I was not in a good space. And I realized that it's so easy for us to forget the things that we've learned. It's like, oh, just like take a moment, like take a moment and look at all the tools that you have and start applying them. We get into like a headspace, we get into a really heady space, and then we get ourselves anxious and we get ourselves worked up and we forget that we have resources available to us. So I would first of all say, get really good at self-soothing. And what I've actually done, and I found this so useful, is I wrote out a little self-soothing script in my journal. And then what I did is I recorded myself saying it into my phone. And when I can feel myself getting, and you can feel it coming when something's, you're in transition, something's not going the way you want it to, because it never fucking goes the way you want it to, because there's another plan. Then you lie down, and my script goes for like a minute, so it's not like I need an hour or something. I lie down, I put my headphones in, and I listen to myself telling me, you've got this. It's going to be okay. This is what you need to do now. And it just instantly changes for me. So I would say create that for yourself. I actually, when I get around to it, I'm going to create one on my website to give away for free. So if people want to come and join there, I'm actually going to create one in the next couple of weeks.
Well, maybe put that in the show notes for all the people. If you want to just let me know what they've got to do, that would be really good. That would be amazing for the people, because I always feel like, well, I know for me, and I'm pretty sure you'd feel probably the same way, because our stories have got our own little sort of same twist, so to speak. And I felt that when I started going through all this big change, when I sold the hairdressing salon and I went into this other world, it was like one big lonely cloud. It was like I was sitting on this cloud all by myself, and I was
such a great way to describe it. Yeah,
I was like on this big cloud all by myself, and although I've been doing spiritual practices for a long, long time, but when you actually get out into the world and start sharing this part of yourself and doing this work, it's a whole other place. And really, this podcast is about women that are wanting to step out in the world and make a great life for themselves, or however that looks, that's wanting to start creating stuff and creating magic in her own life and getting untangled and living that free spirited woman life. And she's stuck. So I'm actually going to do that. I can't wait to try that myself, because I suppose too as well, hearing our own voice and not listening to someone else's meditation and recording your own voice is very powerful.
Yes.
When you create that audio, I'm imagining that you're in that powerful side of yourself. So you're in that real powerful self. Whereas you're doing it when you're in that state, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate you sharing that with the listeners. That's just really good.
Yeah, it's like a mothering archetype, and some people don't have great mothers. So don't think about your mother unless she was really mothering, but you can think about the energy of a mother and what she would say and do. And then they're the kinds of things that you say to yourself in that self-soothing audio. And then you've just got to do it, because sometimes we're like, I have this, but I don't do it. But yeah.
So the next question is, which is one of my big questions, Alana. So I really want to hear your take on this part, because this next question is something personally myself really made me create the brand of Free Spirit Woman, close to my heart. So I used to be apologetic about everything I did in my life, and I always apologized. I still do it quite oftenly. So my question is, how do you, Alana, live your life unapologetically in life, not giving a hooter? Too many people are worrying about what other people think. It is such a huge, I hate, it's just, I see so much of it. And it really frustrates me, I suppose, and it really touches a core to me, because for so long I was not even doing what I wanted to do because of what I thought other people think. So I was apologising for who I was. So how does that relate to you, and how does that feel?
Yeah, look, that's very true for me as well. So I think until 5 or 6 years ago, if anyone's familiar with my story, I had really created a life based on what I thought other people expected me to do. And this is why I'm such an advocate of untangling. This is why I'm always talking about writing your own rule book, and I'm always talking about doing the self-excavation work to figure out what your truth is, because that kind of life, I was really living, it's a difference between living from the head, from the logical, rational of the head, and then dropping down into the truth and sometimes illogical, irrational space of the heart and the soul. Mm. And in the society that we live in, we're taught to function from the head.
Yep.
From a really young age.
Yep.
And for those of us that are like yourself and like me, and I'm sure pretty much every single woman that chooses to listen to this podcast, for those of us that are really sensitive beings, we're going to feel the pressure of society's rules and our family's rules and our partner's rules and like the expectations upon us. And like we were talking about before we started this interview, really amplify that. And then perhaps change the way that move out of alignment with our truth in order to please or to fit in, really. Yeah. And my experience with that has never been good. It's always made me unwell in one way, shape or form. And so it is a constant course correct for me. So how it starts, I think, to live unapologetically, it's not one day like, fuck everyone, I'm just going to do what I want, because that actually just never lasts. It's a constant self-excavation work. So to live from your truth, to live from your heart, which is essentially what you're doing when you're living unapologetically, then you need to be so certain and sure of yourself and your choices. And even when you're not, you need to be able to connect into that space where you can find that certainty or some sand grain size certainty. Just you need to be able to find that. And the way that you find that is by doing the self-excavation, by going inwards and by looking at, like I was talking about earlier, the beliefs and the limiting stories and the core wounds that you hold within you and that have been influencing and that are infiltrating into various areas of your life, and then basically influencing the way that you react, the way that you behave, the choices that you make. So when you understand what those limiting stories are, when you understand what those core wounds are, then they have less power over you. So then you can go, oh, hey, there's that thing again where I believe that I'm really not worthy. And so now I am basically saying yes to something which I don't really want to say yes to, but just to please this person so they love me, so then I feel worthy. See how that happens? So, but when we know this is something that I do because I actually don't feel worthy, and I'm using this example because it's coming up for me a lot at the moment. Then when we know this, then we go, oh, there's me behaving in this way. Like what happens is rather than being in it, unconscious, we then become conscious of it and we can stand back from it and we can see when I make this choice based on this limiting belief, it leads me over to here. And that's not where I want to be anymore. And that's not who I am anymore. And so I come back to here and I go, okay, this belief, this shit doesn't fit anymore. And now I need to clean it up. And so that's how you get to living unapologetically. It's not like, an instantaneous thing. No,
it's not.
It's like a process.
Yeah, another process. Here we go again. But
I'm always processing.
And I am too. And this is why we do this work, Alana. But for me, I get this question all the time. But how do you not give a fuck what people think? How do you not live this unapologetic life? Well, I'm not saying for a minute it's easy, because it's not. It's a constant, I've had battles in my life too as well. And I will share a piece of this because it's my story. I've had friends that have basically questioned my new direction in life. And I've had to really not stand as in really be in my truth. Like you said, keep connecting back into my truth. And your truth is, to me, in a free spirit woman life, it is living it. And unfortunately, it almost has this sort of attitude of not giving a fuck. And the moment I feel that you step into that, instead of always trying to fix the pain or the uncomfortable feeling of not being accepted or being judged and have that attitude of, you know what, this is who I am. This is my truth. This is my heart speaking, like you said, like it all comes back to the heart. We become more powerful. And the moment we start to do it and practice it more, because that's what I've found for me, the more you step into that, the more it becomes part of your makeup, part of your external energy. You know, when you want something so bad inside, but you're not actually physically showing up that way.
Yes.
But then when you take that one step forward and then you do it again and then you do it again, and this could just mean talking to your friends, your family, stepping out into Facebook, stepping out, I'm just pretending here, like just things, however that looks for you, as in the listeners and it's us. I just think it becomes a practice. Here we go again. It's another practice. It's another thing that we tend to work on as a gradual thing. And you become stronger the more you do it. And I always get to start the conversation too, and I'd like to see your point on this. I want to be confident. You don't get confidence without practice. I don't care what no one will tell me anything different. In everything I've done, the confidence comes, first of all, it's courage, then confidence comes after practice. Do you feel that too, Alana?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I look at my journey with podcasting, you know, just sitting here and having this conversation with you, 3 years ago, I could have never have done that. And podcasting has been the thing that has really highlighted that for me. It's like, if you just keep showing up, shit changes.
That's right.
But it's so incremental. It's very incremental that you can feel the resistance of, you know, even like last night when I was lying in bed, I was feeling nervous about this. And I was like, oh, here's this, God, why after 3 years is this not? And I just have to make peace with it and be like, you know what, this maybe one day all of a sudden I will no longer feel the resistance to doing it. And that will be one holy day where I'm like, probably don't even realize because it's so gradual. And then one day all of a sudden I realize, oh shit, I didn't get nervous before. And that's kind of how it happens when we're working through stuff like this and we want confidence or we want to get better at something. It's so incremental. We don't actually really notice the changes as they're happening.
Yeah. So the next one is a real juicy question. I love this question. How do you hear and feel your intuition? So again, everything I chat about is stuff that I get commonly asked. So with my clients so how do you know what is intuition to you? Like, what does it feel like for you, Alana?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. For a really long time, I didn't believe that I could feel my intuition. I didn't believe that I had access to my soul is how I described it. So it was kind of like I try to tune in and it would be like the computer says no. Like you have no access. What I have kind of realized over time for me is that how I hear and feel my intuition is through my body. And because I was living a life and sometimes still do, obviously, very much in my head. I'm, a Capricorn. I'm very strategic. I'm very organized, as you know. So it's very easy for me to be in my head and logical and rational.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we spoke earlier on about living unapologetically and that having to come from a place of connection to our truth and connection to our heart. So I have had to do a lot of work around connecting into my body and connecting into my heart. And I think that was difficult for me in the past because I had spent so much time out of my body because it was painful to be in my body because I was feeling there was residual stuff in my body that I hadn't dealt with and addressed. I suffered from depression, so being in my body was just like fucked, basically. I didn't want to be there. I could also feel like other people's stuff because I hadn't worked enough on my own. I know we all say like I'm empathetic, those kinds of things, and that's great. But I also think part of it is having boundaries.
Yes.
It's fine to say I have lots of empathy and I can feel other people and, oh, that's lovely. But no, if you don't have boundaries, you're going to feel everything. And that's kind of what was happening for me.
Yeah.
And then as a result, because of that, I had put up walls around my heart to stop myself from being hurt and really not trusting I was going to be okay, that I was strong enough. So I had actually erected a wall around my heart. And so I was not able to access my intuition because I was in my head.
Yes.
And even in those points when I dropped into my body and tried to get to my heart, it was just all walled up. It was like, no, like I'm not feeling this because it's too fucking dangerous to feel. And you get hurt. So, it's too uncomfortable.
So can you just touch on that? You just said you get hurt when you go in that, because that's another thing that I commonly hear. So you obviously went into protection for yourself, right? So
protection.
Yeah, so then getting to maybe where you are now, like maybe that was maybe more in the beginning days when you really had to explore that side of yourself. So right now, like so you know how to protect yourself, obviously, so you're not feeling into every single thing and everybody, and even in the shopping centre getting groceries and you're feeling into people's freaking energy. Oh, don't worry, I can be exposed to with that. So it sounds to me like, well, no, I won't answer this question. So when you go in there and you get out of the head and you go to the heart and you feel into what's going on with you, is it just stillness for you, Alana?
For me, it's just a knowing. So I know people say they hear things and they see things. And I think this is just another reason why it was really difficult for me to access my intuition. Sometimes I do hear things, like not a voice, like the voice of God or anything, but like a voice in my head that tells me. And I know by the feeling of it that that was my intuition because it feels very solid and calm and it has a certain sound about it.
Yeah.
But mainly for me is just knowing. I just know like that's right or that's not, or there's something there or there's not. Like when I'm coaching with my clients, for example, they will say a word and it will feel like if you were reading a book and the word jumps off the page and it says like, this is something you need to pay attention to. So I don't see the word, but I feel like, oh, wow, that word's got like charge.
And you know what, Alana, this is what I get. I've got a huge knowing. And it's interesting that I didn't even know this about you. So all the things that I've done with you, I've done a heap of stuff with you, but I've never known that you have the knowing. I get that really strong into. I do get messages, but I don't really want to go down that path of sitting there doing that, oh, you know, you're going to win lotto, you're going to do this, you're going to meet this guy and this king, he's got a king hat on and all that shit. Pardon my French, but I'm being totally raw and authentic here because to me, intuition, it's about helping people to trust themselves. Than getting messages. I'm not talking about spirit messages for beautiful people that have had beautiful loved ones and they want to connect that way. And I was only just speaking to my mother this morning, actually. I might as well just quickly touch on this. And one of our beautiful family members had a reading done by this lady that does the mediumship. Is that what it is? Yeah, mediumship. And it was interesting because Mum said to me, why don't you go and get a reading? And I said, no, Mum, I don't want a reading. Like I don't need messages. Once upon a time, Alana, I used to do a lot of that. I used to go and get readings all the time. Searching for answers and messages. And this is the truth. And then eventually,
me too.
And I realized, hang on a minute, your answers are inside of you. And I'm grateful that I've just remembered that conversation with my mother because we do tend to think it's an external thing, this intuition, that we've got to get other people giving us these answers where it's inside of us. And I truly believe it is trust. When you trust yourself, intuition is on full throttle.
Yeah. And I think when you're looking outside of yourself, you're actually giving your power away.
Yes.
And that can become quite unhealthy. So I've had experiences in the past where I have come to rely on someone as though they know me better than I know myself. And in doing that, they have manipulated me. And I have lost trust in myself because there's like, I always talk about the friction, so there's this friction of my inner knowing, which is like, no, this is the truth for you. And then there's an external something, which is like telling you something else. And that's a friction, right? It's like the two don't match in resonance. Something is not right there. And when you continually ignore yourself, what you're doing is you just keep turning the volume down. Like I'm turning the volume down on this. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want until it gets so dim it's then that's when you feel lost. And in my case, I got taken advantage of because I trusted this person more than I trusted myself. And that's a dangerous game to play.
Oh, yeah. And how beautiful is that we just worked into that, because there is so many people out there doing that. And
yeah,
that is free spirit woman life. And I don't judge that, because I was that woman that was stuck and searching and getting answers and getting people to guide me, and 1,000,001 courses, doing this course, doing that course. Oh my God, seriously, the amount of shit I was looking outside of myself. But then, you know what, all these women that were running these classes and courses were always telling me, Rechelle, you've got the answers. You know what you're doing. But I still didn't believe in myself, and I still didn't trust myself. And that's how I like to talk about intuition. It's all about that trusting of yourself. And like you said before about the message thing, I mean, I'm not saying that people can't get their, you know, some people get that instant, oh my God, they've just been told something, literally like someone's talking in their ear. But it all comes back to trust.
Yeah. I think too, just on your point, I think it's really important to note here too, on your point around consumption. So, and looking externally and doing courses and things like that. What I've personally found for myself as I go through, so I've mapped out basically a 6-stage process that we go through untangling and transition. And what I've found is that there are times when you need to be internal and you need to like block everything else out. And that often happens when we're deep, deep, deep in the transition. So we're in that, like things are ending, they're dropping away. We're in the unknown space, like that space between stories, when the old life has died and the new life is beginning. There's a period where we really shouldn't be consuming anything, or it doesn't feel right to consume anything. When we come out of that, there will be like a process where now it's kind of like time to, I'm ready to consume, or I'm ready to look for the support that I need. So, and it depends what kind of transition it is, because sometimes it's flipped up. Sometimes when you're in that period, you do need external support. I guess what I'm saying is, again, you've got to check with yourself. And just because like we're saying, you know, go inwards, if you're being instructed right now to seek some support or get like do a course or whatever, well, you know, your internal compass tells you, okay, this is for you right now, or no, you shouldn't be consuming anything right now. You just need to go inwards. So
and I'm glad you touched on that, because after you were just speaking, then I sort of maybe have come across the wrong way to listeners. I'm not saying for a moment that a course, I've done that many amazing things with courses and learnings and stuff. They've all helped me to be who I am and keep that strength within myself. But I think what myself personally saying is, there was times when I was doing, I'm not kidding you, I had 6-7 courses going in 1 year. It was like I was excessive. I had a problem literally with looking outside of myself. And that was my point. Like, there's so many amazing things out there. Like, look at the beautiful course that you do. Like, well, I think it's I can't remember the name of your one, but there's so many amazing things out there that are going to help you. But like you said, you've got to check in with yourself. Are you looking externally, or are you really needing this to further yourself, to really be in that and do the work? Are you doing the work? See, for me, I invested in so many courses and I wasn't even doing the work. So you knew there was the problem with me. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was at a point like a method of escapism or a method of, trying to go to not look inwards, because you were like, oh, if I just do this, that thing over there. What I felt it did for me, and I mean, this is about you, but we're having a beautiful conversation. I felt like me wanting to turn the volume down on, so I kept the noise going around me. So the noise stopped me from feeling uncomfortable, because if I didn't have that noise, Rechelle would have then went and had to do the work. So I was like, and this is actually really weird as I'm sharing this now with everybody, because this is actually a real vulnerable part of me. Is I've only just really come to realize that's what I was really doing, was keeping everything around me comforting me. Yeah, distracting you.
Yeah, that's right. And sort of made me think, oh, well, I'm doing that, I can't do that. So I can't go out there and be out there, because if I do that, that's going to be uncomfortable. But unconsciously, I didn't know that's what I was really doing until I had this aha moment and went, you know. So anyways, so thank you for all that information. We need to wrap it up now, because we've just really, you've answered a lot of my questions that I had for you in the mix of just 2-3 questions. But I suppose the only last question I want to ask, and I just want to know how people can obviously find you and just some little fun facts about you too, Alana. But the last question is just, and we have touched on this in what we've just talked about, but how do you turn that self-doubt into your greatest powers?
One thing that I always keep in mind is that often the things that have been the hardest for me have turned into my greatest gifts and my greatest understanding of myself.
Yeah.
So if I give you an example, like I've always really felt like I never really fit in anywhere. Like, you know, I was bullied in high school. I'm the middle child of 3 girls. So, you know, I never really felt like I fit. But what this has actually led me to realize is to discover that I'm an untangled woman. And it has led me to question how we do society and how we actually choose to live. And through that, it has led me to living a much more adventurous, much more aligned life. So that feeling of not fitting in and doubting myself and who I really am has actually been such a great, amazing gift, leading me to my work, you know, the work that I am here to do in the world and the things that I am passionate about, which is something that I searched for so long. So if you're feeling self-doubt, there's gifts under there. There's like, that's just like, it looks like a pile of shit, but if you polish it, there's a diamond in there.
It does.
Like, I wish I was more poetic, but you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And it does feel shit. Sorry, but I'm just trying to speak a bit softly. Well, thank you for all those questions. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about you, Lana, just some little personal things. And there's probably going to be a few little more that I've been thinking about too that I want to ask my listeners to know about you. So what don't we know about you, Alana?
Well, I was thinking about this question yesterday. I share so much of myself online. So I was like, what don't people know? But a lot of people don't know that I actually played something called the electronic organ for 11 years and the clarinet for 5 years. So I don't play anymore, but I was quite musical. I was a band geek in high school. No wonder I was bullied. But yeah, I was like a fat little band geek with pimples all over my face. So I really was. But yeah, it was such a beautiful time in my life, and hopefully I always dream of picking up the clarinet again because it's such a beautiful instrument. So there you go. There's something that most people don't know.
Right, I love that. And so I'm going to drop a few lines on you. They're just real quick questions, right? Because I am going to come to one. So for a free spirit woman life, what is the word that you believe would be super duper powerful for living that and getting untangled, so to speak, as your brand? Like, what's that one word to really, you know, really dig deep within a free spirit?
One word?
Yeah, one word. Yeah.
Gosh. I would say courage.
Oh, I love it.
I would say courage.
Right,
needs so much fucking courage.
Right, fucking courage. I agree. Now, what about the book that would align with our conversation today? I did say favourite book, but I sort of feel it's more about the book around this conversation today. So what book do you feel would really bring them into the free spirit woman life and getting untangled?
That's a good question. So I'll give you 2.
Okay.
So Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and it's a pretty heavy book, and so I think you have to be at a certain point want to read it. But what I found was that rather than reading it from cover to cover, I read chapters that I felt were appropriate for me. So when I was suffering from depression, I listened and consumed everything from him about the pain body and the gift of the pain body and being present with the pain body, which really helped me get back into my body. And connect into my intuition. So that's one. And then the other one that I would recommend, this is my favorite book, but it's so good. It's called The Holographic Universe.
Oh, I've heard that one. Right.
Yeah, it's quite old, but it's kind of like quantum physics a little bit, but it's everything from how the brain functions through to people with near-death experiences to Indian gurus who can manifest things in their hands. And it talks about how the universe is a hologram. Right. You know, the theory is that it's a hologram, and potentially how we can work within that. So it's really cool when you look at it and go, I can mold the universe. I can mold the energy around me, and that becomes super powerful. So that would be my 2.
Oh, I have to check that book out. That sounds really interesting.
It's really good.
Yeah. So thank you, Alana. And I'm just going to now give a beautiful big thank you to you for being amazing. Your answers to all these questions have just been, you've really dig deep in answering. So I appreciate that. They weren't really one word or one sentence, but you really digged within. And I appreciate you doing that for our listeners.
Oh, I've had so much fun. Thank you.
You're just so good at, digging into the stuff and the mix of it all. So I really appreciate you sharing all that beautiful and untangled stuff and free spirit woman stuff through it all. Lucky last is, how do people, if they've loved hearing you and what you've got, what you share, how can they connect and find you, Alana?
So my website is alanahelbig.com.
Yes.
And I have my podcast, which is Untangled, which you can also find there on the podcast tab. So that's where I interview other women and sometimes men who are living untangled lives.
Yes.
And we talk about heaps of different stuff on there. And it's mainly a storytelling podcast. So, and I'm also a podcast mentor as well. So I mentor women in 2 ways. So I mentor women through transition and to living an untangled life. And I mentor other women who want to become podcasters. And so I have an online program there called Ignite Podcasting for Changemakers as well. So there's lots going on over there.
Yeah, but she's amazing, guys. You've got to go over there and check her out. And her podcast, as you can see, she's very deep and gets right into the nicks of things, It's no surface conversation with you. It's always very deep and connected. And I just love it. So thank you, Alana. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the listeners getting to hear all this magic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Free Spirit Woman podcast. As always, if you love what you heard, please head on over to iTunes and leave me a review. In between episodes, you can connect with me online at freespiritwoman.com.au. See you next time.